ladies and gentlemen, this is the Right Guys podcast. Ooh, we got creepy AI friends on the way. And now your hosts, Josh Hammerling, Max McGuire, and Todd Fossey.
Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Max McGuire, here with Mr. Producer Josh Hammerling and friend of the show, Todd Fossey, back. Todd, last time we talked with you, it was before the election. You were pretty sure that it was going to go the way it ended up going. And yeah, we're 100 days in. Glad to have you back. And
good to be here.
And anything you want to say now, you can take your victory lap because you were predicting it was going to go that way. So I give you the floor for a little victory lap.
Man, isn't the world just a whole lot different now? Don't we just sort of isn't there just a different vibe in the air, and there's a weight that's been lifted? And I mean, it was just like immediately, like literally on Inauguration Day, Trump is signing executive orders live, right? And then he literally goes into a stadium and he's signing executive orders. Like, it's just been just amazing. I am stoked. I'm stoked at where we've been. Obviously, the what was accomplished in those first 100 days is amazing and breakneck, and the trajectory that I see things going, I'm even more encouraged. But I'm always cautiously optimistic because I want Trump and his administration to know that we are vigilant patriots, and that you and your cabinet and your administration works for us, and that we are keeping you on a very short leash, right? Make no mistake, if this thing goes left or right, and any level of usurpation begins to take place, that we will hold your feet to the fire, because that is our job. That is our job as patriots. So, but overall, I mean, I couldn't be more thrilled with how things have gone.
We aren't specifically planning to talk about this, but I remember last time you're on, you didn't want to talk about January 6th, obviously, because there was a lot up in the air in terms of prosecutions. And then Josh said he was talking to you. You said you wanted to wait to see the details of the pardon. And the pardon's pretty wide-reaching. Anyone who committed any crimes in and around the Capitol. You don't have to share anything. Just wanted to get your take on that. Are you feeling good about how wide that pardon was?
There's people who are still in
for other things, like the guy with the grenades that he says was planted.
I don't know all the details, right? I still think that we're on a bit of shaky ground there. I'm not completely happy with it. I mean, there are other things. I want everyone who was persecuted, not just prosecuted. I want them compensated. Yeah. I want them to be compensated handsomely. I want their name to be cleared. I want them to walk down the street with their head high and being seen as the heroes that they are. The world doesn't know the reality of what happened that day. I was there, and I mean, when I was there, I was there. I was there. So I want to be careful with what I talk about until I know kind of that the world is on stable ground when it comes to what happened on January 6th. But I'll tell you, if it's anything, it's a great case study of the power of propaganda.
Oh, we saw it just this week. With Donald Trump's nominee to be the U.S. attorney in D.C. Tom Tillis killed the nomination because he didn't like his stance on January 6th, which is a wild thing to see from a Republican up for re-election in a red state, saying he won't support the nominee because he doesn't like that he opposed the way that January 6th protesters were prosecuted, even though almost all those protesters were prosecuted unlawfully, indicted unlawfully. The Supreme Court held that the interpretation of that statute was interpreted wrongly, right? So there are people who served their whole prison sentences, and only for the Supreme Court said you never should have gone in.
Oh my God! Yeah,
I was telling Josh before we went live, or before we went on the air, started recording. I was telling Josh that I've made friends with some of those people who went in, And just I want to show my love and my support, my respect for them and what they went through. And I hope that everyone does. I hope everyone can reach out to the J6ers and show their love and support and respect in a wide variety of ways. I mean, these were our upstanding moral individuals who were professionals, whose entire careers and lives were destroyed. And fortunately for the ones that I've become friendly with, their wives stayed with them and their families rallied around them and continued to give them support. But that wasn't true of everybody. So lives were destroyed for no reason. I mean, they were swatted in the middle of the night, the whole thing, like everything that this audience is already familiar with. And that is 100% unacceptable in this country.
And just to wrap this up with a little bow, Tom Tillis wouldn't vote for Ed Martin because he didn't like that he was defending the January 6th protesters. But now Tom Tillis is enthusiastic, it seems, about Jeanine Pirro filling the spot. And Jeanine Pirro is far more of a conservative firebrand, far more outspoken about the injustices. So none of this makes sense. They had to have something with Ed Martin. It doesn't make sense that they oppose him, but cheer Judge. I like Judge Jeanine. I like that nomination. It just doesn't make sense.
I think I mentioned the last time I was on with you guys that we have been experiencing the war on reason. Yeah. And that war has not come to an end.
Yeah. So Josh, you wanted to talk about the AI friends. You showed me this video. And this wasn't on my radar, and it's freaky. I mean, anything with Zuckerberg is kind of freaky. He definitely gives off like humanoid, almost human vibes, no matter what he does, no matter what he says. Set up this clip. Let's play this clip and talk about it.
So Zuckerberg's sitting here talking about essentially the future of Meta. It's not Facebook anymore, it's Meta. And he somehow distilled a person down to having the ability to handle X amount of friends. And you don't have enough of them, right? And the average person has about 3. Which is just weird. I can already hear Todd laughing like about have humans turned into computers with plugs where they can start plugging in friends, right? That's essentially what he's saying, is that we've distilled you down to being able to handle about 15 to 25. And he'll say it better than I can. I'm just gonna play this.
I think as the
oops. Well, I can't get it to play.
Play it with just us out of the picture.
There we go. I think that will just be really compelling. One thing just from working on social media for a long time is there's the stat that I always think is crazy. The average American, I think it's fewer than 3 friends.
I guarantee you,
3 people they consider friends, and the average person has demand for meaningfully more. I think it's like 15 friends or something, right? I guess there's probably some point where you're like, all right, I'm just too busy. I can't deal with more people. But the average person wants more connectivity, connection than they have. So, there's a lot of questions that people ask of stuff like, okay, is this going to replace kind of in-person connections or real life connections? And
of course it will.
My default is that the answer to that is probably no. I think I think that there are all these things that are better about kind of physical connections when you can have them. But the reality is that people just don't have the connection and they feel more alone a lot of the time than they would like. So I think that a lot of these things that today there might be a little bit of a stigma around, I would guess that over time we will find the vocabulary as a society to be able to articulate why that is valuable and why the people who are doing these things are like, why they are rational for doing it and how it is adding value for their lives. But also I think that the field is very early. So, I think, there are a handful of companies and stuff who are doing virtual therapist and, there's like virtual girlfriend type stuff, but it's very early.
Well, okay. So I'm pretty sure I just heard Zuckerberg say that he can replace your therapist, your friends, relationships with AI, and he's about to introduce it, whether we want it or not. And we don't have a vocabulary for it yet, but we'll have to come up with one to justify why we do this. I mean, that that was the argument from him. And
listen, so for the audience at home, they don't know that I have a background in psychology and behavioral sciences, and I'm trained to pick up on deceptive and manipulative indicators. And the level of manipulation that was happening in that clip is staggering. He was well rehearsed. He was well rehearsed on exactly how he wanted to deliver that in a way that would bypass critical thinking as much as possible and bypass pushback as much as possible. That's like you're when you're talking about Mark Zuckerberg, you're talking about a person who is void of empathy. Right. So of course it isn't going to bother him because he doesn't have empathy. He can't see things from another human being's point of view. He basically is AI. He's a cyborg. Give me a break. Like you're going to present yourself as some kind of an authority on AI and the ethics of AI when you don't have any empathy to begin with? Come on.
Yeah. How many positive relationships does a person really need? You know, that is that a contextual question? Because they seem to take it down to an actual number that it sounds like they've researched, right? They're treating you like a computer.
Of course they have.
This is focus group tested.
Of course they have. There's a reason why he said that.
So he might not even need to do that. Remember, they have Facebook, they have Instagram, they have the virtual reality, so they can see the friend graph, right? They can see the degrees of separation. They can see how many times people are actually wishing their friends happy birthday. There's ways that you could go through that data. And like I have 600 Facebook friends. They're not all really my friends. If I really wanted to, I could look through the data and figure out how many real friends I have, even if you don't even know me. So they have so much data at their fingertips. It's scary.
I can tell you right now that the people who are closest to me in my life, but the people who I would consider to be like, I have to trust you 100% for me to call you my friend. I have to have zero doubt in my mind that you have my back at all costs and I have yours. I can count the number of those people on one hand.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't interact with any of them on social media. I mean, if I do, it's very minimal. Very minimal. We can go in so many directions on this. Yeah. How about this? Let me say this. I don't know if you're aware of this, but there are futurists who are saying that the technology is there, and by the year 2030, that there will be nano AI bots that will be in our bloodstream, and that will be moving through our neocortex, and all of our thoughts and all of our emotions and all of our personalities and all of our dreams, conscious and unconscious, will be interacting with the cloud in real time.
Disturbing, the idea.
So we don't even have to hack in, right? I'm just saying, if someone chooses to do that, right, they wouldn't even have to hack in because they're already hacked in. At least in the movie The Matrix, they had the option of whether or not they wanted to hack in or hack out.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, for those who are out of the Matrix, right, and hopefully they're not spraying us with those nanobots, so we have no choice.
You mean,
or they're not putting the nanobots in our food or our water or our air. What's that?
Like in chemtrails, or your food, or your water, or your favorite soft drink, right? It just gets delivered via something beautiful and tasty.
It's injected into livestock for your meat, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that the technology is that advanced where they could do it? I mean, you look at how expensive it is to get the smallest motherboard on the market. Just the economics of scale and all of that. I definitely think it's doable right now.
I think it is.
I've
listened to interviews with top experts in the world on this topic, that it's there, just a matter of administrating the rollout now through 2030. Guys, I feel very confident that we are on the brink of a technological revolution that will change life as we know it so fundamentally and so drastically that we will look back from this interview 5 years from now and say, my God, the world isn't even close to being the same. So then it's just a matter of dissecting it. I don't know if you guys saw this, but recently Elon Musk was interviewed about AI. He said that it was a 20% chance that killer robots will come after humans to destroy humans through AI over the course of the next 5 to 10 years.
The joke
that came directly out of Elon's mouth. 20% chance.
The joke that I usually make is that AI is going to decide one day it doesn't like sour cream. And then it decides to start getting rid of sour cream and all the things connected to it, like cows and people and restaurants, right? Like you don't know what it's just going to turn itself on, what it's going to find fun. Going back to some of the AI as a friend, do people really have that many plugs? I mean, are AI friends going to supplant real friends? And you're talking about a mode of connectiveness now, that if you were plugged in, how would you know the difference between a real friend and a fake friend at that point?
Well, you think about, we don't even really know the extent of the technology. I'm convinced that we're already consuming deep fakes that we don't know are deep fakes.
A lot of it's easy to tell. I mean, it's very good, but in like animation, there's something called the uncanny valley. And it's the way I describe it is if you look at like Pixar in the early 2000s, like you look at Pixar movies like Toy Story, those were humans. Like when they made Sid, it was a human, but you look at it as like, he's not quite a human. He's human-esque, but he's not quite. And you look at some of these AI videos and they're very, very good, but you pay close enough attention. Maybe that's the problem. People aren't paying close enough attention. You pay close enough attention and it triggers, at least when I see it, the same kind of uncanny valley of that's not really human. It's close. It's just an uncomfortable feeling watching it.
Yeah. There's something that your intuition just picks up on, that something's off. And then when you know what to look for, you can find it. What I'm actually talking about, Max, is a technology that we can't pick up on, that they're not letting us know.
Yeah.
Like
I've read a lot into this, and there are some people that theorize that uncanny valley, the uncomfortableness, can actually be like almost evolutionary, of like humans and other humanoid kind of species not wanting to be around them, that you can tell when something isn't quite human. Like you think a long time ago, figuring out Neanderthal versus Homo sapien, that there might be something actually encoded in our DNA to be on the lookout for non-humans, which is crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. When it starts to get concerning is when you start to think about AI having its own independent movements and having its own independent thought, like robots.
Like Mission Impossible. The Mission Impossible movie.
Just watched it.
Like robots that are going to start rolling out, and self-driving vehicles and cars, and I think we'll have self-driving flying cars, which to me that makes more sense to have a self-driving flying car than my wife and I were having this conversation that is like, I don't know how other people feel about it, but like I want to drive. Like I enjoy the driving experience, especially when I'm behind the wheel of a great vehicle. Like I want to be the one driving the vehicle.
Yeah.
And it concerns me, like, who knows, maybe, there was a time when I first started filmmaking, I was literally splicing 16 millimeter film, and I was against the whole digital movement. Now I'm all about it. Maybe maybe down the road, my opinions about that will change. But what really concerns me are the security concerns, like that, bad people with bad intentions can hack into that type of technology to do really bad things to good people.
Yeah. How many people would it take? How many workers would it have taken to actually edit and splice that film together when it was actual analog film?
Well, usually it was just me, and I did it by myself.
In a perfect world where like you have a team, like there would be usually like a team of people in a perfect world, right? Obviously the digitalization of that made it so that one kid in high school on his laptop could could use free software. 20 years ago, he could do it, right? That's the part of this that frightens me the most. You look at like the turn of the 20th century, we had tens of millions of horses in this country before the automobile was invented. The Model T rolls out, people buy cars, and there's a mass culling of horses because we don't need them anymore, right? I look at this, you talk about self-driving cars. Obviously advancement's going to come, but we have to make sure that we aren't the horses in this scenario, right? Because the most commonly held job in all 50 states, not a majority, but a plurality, is either a truck driver or some kind of connected field where you're driving for a living. And to cheer on and advance a technology that would put a plurality of workers in every state out of business. Talk about the auto body shops, AI driving. You think conceivably less crashes, auto body shops go out of business. It's kind of like how you're seeing some gas stations close down.
Almost everything. Almost everything. I think you can go. Well, I want to put it like this, and I have some notes that we can go through if it helps on this, but we don't have to. But
Sure.
I'm actually I have kind of a balanced view on it, and for the audience who knows, like they might get mad at me about this because I'm a devout follower of Jesus Christ. I mentioned this when I was on with you guys last time, so there's some interesting implications there when you start talking about biblical prophecy. There's a side of me that looks at the advancement in medical technology, and I think all technology is going to change it, and it has the potential to really improve the quality of life and the society of the world as a whole dramatically. Like our quality of life could just be amazing, and that's really exciting for me. Then we can go down other roads too, that where it can get really, really dangerous. But just to give you an example, just on the personal, like the selfish side, I was thinking about this a lot recently. It was like, because Elon said he's going to start rolling out some of his robots soon. That'll be AI robots, and they'll be on the internet. I'm like, man, I have a hobby farm. Would I love to have a robot be doing the chores? Like, and my best friend, he owns a manufacturing business, and he actually told me last week. He said, as soon as they're on the market, I'm buying 2. Because my productivity will go through the roof. I don't have to pay them. I don't have to have insurance for them. I don't have to worry about lawsuits. You
might still need insurance if they're going to interact with other people.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
You don't want the robots ripping people's limbs off.
Robot insurance.
But you get the idea. Like on a very practical level, I think it could be a really. It's like a weapon, right? It could be used for good or it can be used for bad. It's just a matter of the intent of the individual that's behind it.
But that's the part. When it supplants labor to that extent, right? Once you have, I won't say living and breathing, but walking around robots who are able to do humanoid tasks similar to what Elon showed off, then there's no job that's safe.
No.
There's no job that's safe. Combine that with AI, even AI of the future. There's no job that's safe. And then the question is, why would anyone employ a human when they can do that? And then the question is, if this is going to make our life so much better, will it make our lives better if we don't have a job to be able to afford the technology, right?
I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on this because I just used the phrase earlier today, but what's the name of the fund that Trump has started? So there's a trust fund for the United States where all of our profits will be going into from future technology. Sovereign wealth fund. All of our profits for trade will be going into, and all the technologies that will be developed, and the idea is to distribute the wealth from the sovereign wealth fund to the citizens of the United States. So it is an interesting thought to me with the level of profitability that could be happening with the collaboration with AI, depending on what that ratio is, that all of that wealth is going into that fund and then distributed to us so that we can do things that we're called to do instead of being in this, being in this debt based and being wage slaves and debt slaves. And to me, that would be a really interesting idea.
I could see that happening. I mean, that would kind of feel like what Dubai has, right? Where Dubai
Yeah.
pays its citizens based on the oil exploration, oil profits.
Yeah.
But
Trump actually brought
for
experts over from Dubai and Qatar and Saudi Arabia because they all have the sovereign wealth fund, and they got input for how we might implement that in the U.S.
But we would need either a huge influx of capital or the discovery or advancement of something that's so profitable that didn't exist before.
I think
it's hard. It'd be hard for me to accept that like everyone can stop working tomorrow and we'll just be able to pay everyone. You know what I mean? Like you either have to build up to it or there has to be like, oh, we just struck a gold mine with this new resource, unobtainium. It's the resource of the future.
I think both of those two things could happen. I think both of those things could be true. I'm optimistic about that, and then there's implications to that too, right? With the human condition, it's an interesting hole to fall down. But here's another thing that sort of comes into mind that can be a bit of a concern, and that is when we're talking about multinational corporations who take the position of growth at all costs, and that the growth of the AI and the application of AI is going faster than we can keep up with, and it isn't regulated in the right ways. That gets problematic really fast.
Especially with consolidation of wealth with trillionaires at that point. Quadrillionaires, it doesn't matter. At that point, they could leverage the whole system towards them.
Or AI itself could leverage the whole system for its own benefit.
So, okay. So we've been kind of mentioning that obviously the laborious tasks of humans are the first things that we give up. So what happens to us societally when we decide to like hand over the childbearing and the teaching and the television and the entertainment? Because that's where I start getting really freaked out. Like business, yeah, that stuff's scary. Like there's some advances to being able to not having to do my own dishes or have an AI robot mow my lawn. But what happens when you get that really lazy person that decides to put their 2-year-old in front of their AI best friend? So
it's a really interesting paradox, I think. Josh, I don't know if you remember this conversation when one of the first conversations I had with Rocky Mountain Self Defense is an affiliate of Integrative Defense Strategies, my business, and I said, our relationship can't work if we don't have trust and integrity.
Yeah,
it's sort of like our Constitution. Our Constitution can't work unless we as citizens have integrity, right? And I think it's similar to that. I hope that it's discovered and it's encouraged that what portions of life and learning and human development and experience require real human interaction. And my hope is, again, this is just pie in the sky. Hope is that maybe the AI will actually afford for more of that instead of less of that. Maybe we'll come to an understanding where we say, enough of all the social media crap. Let's just have the AI do all the bullshit for us, and let's get together and have real community again.
It could very well happen. But essentially, Zuckerberg was talking about really the greatest propaganda tool that could ever be created. An AI starts loving all the flavors of ice cream you do and shows it to you. Starts loving all the positions you take on a political stance, XYZ, fill in the blank, right? So what do we do as a society to say, hey, AI can't be allowed to help people run for office or come up with political ads or to pick a person that comes out there? Like, and they'll find ways to put that labor on.
They've already started doing it. They've already started doing it here in Texas.
Question.
Here in Texas, they just passed a law that you can't use AI generated images in political ads. So like there were AI generated voices that were doing robocalls for the 2016 and 2024 election, and they banned those. But what isn't illegal is to hire someone who is an impersonator and have him do the voice, right? So we're creating, it's an imperfect system for sure. But it's been interesting watching the freak out over it from the people who are the most likely to be harmed by it, the politicians. They're the most likely to be harmed by an AI generated image showing them doing something bad. They seem less inclined to get out in front of the ball and protect everyone else, right? Because it's obviously it's not their skin on the line. I look at all of these new technologies, and you can see how it can be used for evil or for badness by how like the sex industry adopts it, right? The internet was great, but if you actually look, like most of the internet has to do with like sex and pornography. They're already rolling out AI sex robots in Japan.
Oh yeah,
that's already rolling out, right? We were talking a little bit before we came on, but there's a huge scandal in OnlyFans where these sex workers, pornographic actresses, whatever, they foster relationships with their clients, but those relationships are entirely built using AI chat features where they train the AI to communicate like them to people, and that people are paying them money for affection, thinking they're talking to a real person, but in reality they're just talking to a really well-trained AI. So we can see even now how the dangers of this technology and how it's kind of being rolled out in the sex industry, just cutting edge, really scary. Like you don't know if you pick up the phone, you don't know if you're talking to a human or an AI. People are showing up to job interviews and the camera's turned off from the interviewer. The interviewer's AI. I saw a video today of someone who was applying for a job and used AI to apply, and he was being interviewed by AI. So the interview was just two AI bots talking to each other.
You know what this reminds me of? There's an old Saturday Night Live skit that was a college lecture, like a series of college lectures, and one of the students had, remember the little hand recorders for college lectures? We used to, and then your friend like, hey, will you record the lecture for me? And then you would bring their recorder in, right? Well, that happened in the SNL skit, and then one guy had everyone's recorders, right? And then eventually it was just all recorders and the professor. And then the next scene was a recorder that was the professor's recorder that was giving the lecture, and then a bunch of other recorders that were recording the lecture. So it becomes this really fascinating paradox. Like I think it's here. It's upon us, and we're experiencing the most fascinating time. We're in it right now, and it's just starting to speed up and ramp up.
Isn't that
the most
scary?
fascinating time in human history.
Isn't it scary that all of the evidence so far, including that what you're just talking about, like new technology, how do people use it? It's like a race to the bottom of pure laziness. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, to get to laziness, you have to go past convenience, and convenience for convenience sake is fine. But like in a not too distant future, when someone's 500 pounds sitting on their couch eating potato chips that are being delivered to them by robots, right? And they have a fleet of robots doing everything they need to do in life, and they're just sitting there. That's a dangerous place to be in. Yeah.
That's why I said we have to have integrity. I think about it like all of the things that I would be doing the opposite of that. Like, what are all the really hard things that I can do that now that my time and my finances are freed up to the point where I can do all of those really hard challenges? You know, that's what I think. That's what I think about. Like, even for me, like I use AI now, and I'll tell you how I use it. So Josh knows I write a lot of kind of blog posts.
Yeah.
And I'll wake up in the middle of the night or early in the morning. I usually have an idea and I'll sit down and I'll start writing it. But and I'm a good writer, and I've been a professional writer in the past, but my grammar and my punctuation is horrible. So I'll ask it to proofread it for me. And I'll ask specifically, will you proofread this specifically for those reasons, for punctuation and grammar? And then it'll give it to me, and I'll say, okay, are there any adjustments in language that you would make here? And usually I don't like the adjustments that they would make in language, and I change it back to what I had originally written. But I'm very careful that what I have written is coming from me. That's coming from the heart. That's coming from my mind. Instead of saying, will you write me something on this topic?
Yeah.
But I will use it in other ways. Like, okay, will you write a title for me that will be more optimized for search engine than what I would come up with? Or will you please create hashtags for me that will optimize my SEO? So things like that. I think again, it's going to come down to the intent of the individuals that are using it.
So let me kind of, I always like a biblical lens when I look at this stuff. When you look about, read especially in Revelations, how the Antichrist kind of shows up, everybody gives up everything that is God for him. And does AI get to the point where it can convince people that it itself is the answer in the light? Because it gives them all the answers. It gives them all their money. It gives them their health at that point. Like, it becomes this big barrier between God and AI. And I think that's what a lot of the transhumanists are trying to do, because they don't want to see a world with God's light in it.
Yeah.
So is that the case? And there, when we get to this, I want to ask you one really big question about AI, but address that piece first.
Well, first off, the Bible prophecy is very clear. It gives very clear descriptions about who the Antichrist is. And the Antichrist is human. And again, there's a long list of criteria for someone to be the Antichrist, and there's a specific event that that person actually becomes the Antichrist, where Satan actually enters into that person. It's called the abomination of desolation, where they stand in the third rebuilt temple and declare themselves to be God on earth. So there's 100%.
That. There's the Antichrist, but there's also just Antichrist.
Right.
And things can be Antichrist without.
Yeah. Then there's Antichrist. But I think what we're describing here today, what the dangers of this are, and this is what I was talking about earlier, is the beast system.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
there's the Antichrist and there's the beast system, and they work together. And then there's the false prophet, and there's a whole bunch that goes into this, and I don't want to digress too much. But that's what I was getting at earlier. Even us as patriots, right? As followers of Jesus Christ, we need to be very vigilant. We need to be very vigilant about the things that we're seeing. Like for me, specifically, like when I became born again, God gave me the commission to have a specific job of being what's called a watchman. It's my job to watch what's happening in the world and to warn people about the dangers of those things. For me, I'm not so paranoid that I throw the baby out with the bathwater until I start to see the very clear signs that this is obvious. And maybe they are, maybe I'm missing it. But as of right now, I see an awful lot of good that can come of it. On the other hand, there would be theologians that would argue, well, that's the problem, right? Because the Antichrist comes along and uses the beast system, and he becomes the person who solves all the problems in the world. And by the way, Trump doesn't fit those criteria for the Antichrist. For those who are watching, if you read the criteria in the Bible, Trump does not fit that criteria.
Moses comes down from the mountain with the 10 Commandments, says to his people, these are God's law. And he looks down, they're all worshiping the golden calf. It's all debauchery. Christ comes back, says, hey, I'm back, and looks at the earth, and the earth is consumed by all of the 7 deadly sins that can all be facilitated by AI. I mean, we just talked about sex robots, obviously lust, gluttony, sloth, right?
That would be more like the days of Noah.
Yeah, or Sodom and Gomorrah.
Matthew 24, Jesus prophesied when the disciples were asking him, how will we know when the end time is here? And he said, as it was in the days of Noah, so it shall be in the coming of the Son of Man. And I think that we can take a look around and argue that, oh yeah, it's very similar right now to what it was like during the days of Noah. And I know it sounds crazy, but I actually think that there was advanced technology during that time. And there was definitely a lot of genetic manipulation that was happening during that time. And that's why the flood had to come.
Yeah.
So are those signs here? Most definitely. Don't misunderstand me. But I think it would be nice if we could use this technology for good. And perhaps
manipulation. That's interesting because you read and they talk about giants, they talk about fallen angels, demons living among you.
Yeah.
The idea whether it's literal genetic modification or just interbreeding, crossbreeding with giants and things like that. No, there's a lot in scripture to support that.
Yeah, it was both. I mean, 75% of scripture is all about genetics.
Yeah.
There's a reason why Jesus was born of a virgin.
Yeah. There's a reason why that they list all of the descendants of Noah, right? I mean, that they are right in their generations. And I've been reading a lot about that lately.
There are genetic authors. There are genetic historians who have figured out that the deep state, specifically the international banking cartel as we know it, are the same bloodlines that go back to the Pharisees and Sadducees that persecuted Jesus Christ, and that those bloodlines go all the way back to Genesis 6, where the fallen angels actually mated with human women to create a hybrid offspring, that they carry that specific bloodline, the bloodline of Cain in the story of Cain and Abel. So I'm not saying that's exactly what I believe. I think there's some interesting arguments there. I'm saying there are some really compelling intellectual arguments that support that idea.
Which is just terrifying. Hey, and I shared with Todd a while. Did you have one, Max?
No, go ahead.
So CERN, we've all heard of CERN. They're a particle collider. And their stated goal, there's a lot of esoteric symbolism they put up. They have the goddess of death everywhere. Like there's 666, and it's wild, right? So these particle accelerators are meant to tear holes in time space and to bring information in. That is their stated goal, and they may have accomplished that. And I shared with Todd, I was like, they have trained AI to record the data from those places. So whatever's on the other side has just in effect trained AI on our side. So what did it pick up? What was the message? Is what data? Like an AI doesn't know anything beyond the data that it's given. Right now, it's not smart enough to create on its own. It's getting close. But what does it do with all this information? Even information that could be from a completely other dimension. Heaven or hell starts to plug in there pretty easy. So that really worries me. Am I off track?
No.
On that line of thinking?
You're not off track at all.
Because I find it terrifying.
My understanding is, I could, of course, I could be wrong about this. I'm trusting in what was communicated to me was that the white hats, the good guys, now have control of CERN.
So the black hats were in charge of it for a while, far too long.
Yeah. I can't. Of course, I can't prove that, but I believe that that's true. I could be very wrong about everything I'm saying. Like, how can I know? Right.
I mean, the same thing happened in Stranger Things. The good guys eventually took over the lab, but at that point it was too late, and all the demons kept squeezing. Have you guys watched Stranger Things? I mean, that's basically what you're talking about. Except it's a human with like psionic powers who creates that rift in space-time, opens a portal to what they call the Upside Down, which is like a demonic alter universe. Then the Russians come in, they open it. It's open. I think
that kind of stuff is going on. I think we don't have a clue that the extent to which this covert war is taking place. But I think that we're a part of that war. I mean, we're digital warriors, we're digital soldiers, and our consciousness and our spirit and what we are transmitting and what our behaviors are and what our beliefs are a part of that war. This conversation that we're having is a part of that war. And so that's why I believe that the more optimistic we are, the better off that we all are. Because if we're not optimistic, then they win, because their biggest weapon is fear.
Fear and doubt, yeah.
Right. And so if we live free from fear, I'm not saying free from caution. Right. Of course, look what I do for a living. I do caution for a living. But that doesn't mean that I do fear for a living. Right.
There are people who posit, you guys know what the Mandela effect is, right?
Yeah.
Where the idea like I am, like, for me, I grew up reading Bernstein Bears, and I remember photographic memory, remember how it was spelled. Now you pick up the book and it's Berenstein Bears. Yeah. And you're like, that's not how it was spelled when I was a kid. No, I know
there's a bunch of that. There's a bunch of that out there.
The theory that some people have posited is that CERN or whatever might have opened a rift, split a timeline, or had timelines converge
Yeah.
So we've absorbed another timeline, and every time that happens, little things change. Like all of a sudden, Fruit of the Loom doesn't have a cornucopia anymore.
Yeah, it did.
I remember it having a cornucopia.
It did. Get out of
there
here.
are things missing, and they've disappeared. And is there?
We're being gaslit. We're being gaslit.
All right, so there's one. We've got about 15 minutes left, but this might be a question that you go off on or you don't. A long time ago, there's not often I've given you a question where you sit there and you go,
But you asked me hard questions. You asked me a really hard question at the conference in front of a bunch of Krav Maga people. I'll never forget that one.
We can go over if we have to. We just won't be able to stream this live.
You remember that, Josh? Remember that question?
I do. But you answered it, and that's what I wanted. And we're still friends.
And it went over like a fart in church.
Hey, if is AI a narcissist? And that's the one where you paused on it before. It has no emotion. Everything it does is for someone else, or is it for itself? It doesn't care about the outcomes. So is AI a narcissist?
Well, it would be more of a psychopath, because the main difference between a psychopath and a narcissistic personality disorder is that the narcissist needs to have an ending supply of attention and admirers. They need to be exalted. So I don't know if all AI needs to be exalted. I think there's a lot of AI that is smart enough to lay low. Right.
Let me give you an example.
The narcissist needs to be the center of attention, whether that's positive attention or negative attention.
Here's
so
an
it's
example.
More of a psychopath.
Does it make me feel better?
My kids are really into Pokemon cards. So we are creating for them a full binder from 1 to 1025, one spot for each card. And they find it and they're like, Dad, put it in the binder. I don't know where it goes. I don't know the Pokedex order. It's called the Pokedex, the encyclopedia, whatever. So I'll go to AI on my phone, Google AI, and I'll say, hey, what's the Pokedex number for this Pokemon? I'll read it out. It will mistransliterate what I say, tell me there's no such Pokemon, no Pokemon exists. I will then spell it out for it, and then it will gaslight me that I'm the one who got it wrong.
Yeah.
And say, oh, it will say, oh, you should enunciate better. I'm like, what the hell? you're my AI. Like, you just mistransliterated something. That's not me. That's you. And I'm
2001.
And
it's 2001 Space Odyssey. Got to unplug that fucker.
But like I've experienced it where like you tell it something and it mishears you, and then it will gaslight you to say that you got it wrong. And I'm like, wow, that's incredible.
I have AI create thumbnails for me sometimes for the blogs that I write. And they're usually great thumbnails, but there are times where it won't create a thumbnail. And they'll say, sorry, you're all out of your uses of creation of imagery today. I'm like, I haven't created any images today.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're all out of creating images. Like, I haven't created any images today. So these are the types of glitches, but that's minor though, isn't it? I mean, think about the national security concerns.
Yeah. What happens if...
Think about the medical concerns. Think what happens when self-driving cars are going crazy and self-driving planes and drones are going bonkers, right?
But even before that, what happens when people rely on AI to make decision-making? So like right before we came on here, I was using the XAI Grok. I have a hearing before my HOA board. So I'm basically just feeding in all the evidence I have, right? Saying, how would you go about this? And it's giving me a pretty good answer until I actually start looking at the footnotes. Of the 10 footnotes that it gave me, one doesn't exist. It's not real. It's just making it up. And that's fine. You have to accept, you have to do your due diligence, right? But like I was asking it questions about like Tren de Aragua and how Trump had declared it to be a terrorist organization. It was adamant that never happened. Even as I would feed it like press releases and White House statements, said, no, that didn't happen. You're wrong. I'm more like, we'll get to that. We'll get to that place where it controls everything. Right now, we're at the place where the people who control things are using AI and it's getting things really, really wrong. And they're using it for decision making. That in the short term scares me far more.
Fair argument, man. What can I say? I agree.
Yeah.
The things that gets wrong are little until you realize that big decisions are made off of them, right? Scary stuff. Go ahead, Josh.
Where was I going to go? All right, so let's say now I've been talking to some people, and there's been claims out there that there is these predictive analyst software that allows them to war game scenarios, social media posts, videos, propaganda, and to plug it into the system to see if I was to attack this, if I can take that and hold it, and is it going to cause World War III? Is it just going to be a little blip on the radar? These predictive programs. So are we facing right now events happening in the world based on a predictive
you have
program?
supercomputers that are gaming against other supercomputers. Everything's gamed out with supercomputers over and over and over again. I know that for a fact. So whoever the enemy is, they have AI supercomputers, and the supercomputers are versus one another.
So is there an active war of AI going on between states? United States, Russia, China.
I would say more like yes, but I would call them all multinational corporations.
Well, that's a whole other can of worms there, because then
the governments are multinational corporations.
Yeah, I mean, like we knew that this kind of like gaming, like war gaming out. I mean, 1980s, the movie War Games was about this very issue, right?
Yeah.
But we don't live in a world anymore where you can tell the computer to play itself and it just dies because we're way past that. I mean, just to show like, are they war gaming things out? There was something on Twitter last week, and it was a question that kind of went viral, and it was asking who would win.
I know.
100 gorillas versus one gorilla versus 100 humans.
100 men. Yeah.
100 humans. And the ad is just going through.
I posted AI videos about that.
Yeah.
It took people like a day to generate AI battles between 100 humans and one gorilla.
The best one was like a 10,000 Mike Tysons versus 100,000 gorillas.
Yeah.
I think it's great. We are experiencing the AI wars happening, right? It's AI versus AI right now. It's just that eventually it has to become kinetic on the human level, and there will always be human factors. The only way there won't be human factors is if they eliminate us all, which is interesting because there is a Bible prophecy that says that if the days were not shortened, there would be no flesh left alive.
Yeah.
And that means that Jesus Christ comes back before that happens. And that there's also prophecies of a major falling away. So that there will be a lot of people that will buy into the beast system, and that will become their God. And it's a matter of us having discernment whether or not we want to worship it.
Yeah, and that's the piece I worry about, is that who sits there and those lazy humans are like, I don't need God, I found this AI.
Yeah,
and it's doing everything I need, because it's replaced everything I've had to do, all of my work. I have money now because of it. I've got a house. Yeah. It gave me everything I need. My health is better.
Yeah,
it makes it so easy. And
but it doesn't have the most important part.
The soul.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. It's not real.
And it's not God.
It's not God.
It's a counterfeit of it.
I'll tell you. I mentioned it earlier, but the Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, the next one's coming out, I think later this month. That was the first one in a long time that actually made me uneasy because of how realistic it was. For whatever reason, the idea of like a Splinter Cell getting 3 nuclear bombs, that was still far-fetched. This plot of an AI being able to control everything and how it gets out of control. But the really scary part is even after every country in this movie, and it's a couple years old, I'm not spoiling it for anyone, but even after every country realized that this is like out of control, rather than destroying it, they're all racing each other and fighting each other over the possibility of controlling it, right? So even when you realize that this thing's going to kill us all, right, they're still shooting each other over the key, not to destroy it, but we want to control it. That, to me, that hit home, because like even in a world where we see it's kind of jumped out of containment and we see that it's dangerous, you even wouldn't even have cooperation to kill it. You'd still have people shooting each other over who gets to control it. That to me was the scariest bit.
It could happen, That's why our leadership has to be benevolent. And for me, I think it's a really interesting idea that AI could actually decentralize things, right? Like through certain cryptos, and through a new independent financial system that government and finance isn't centralized, it's decentralized. And so if we are, as the people, we the people are the leadership, and if we have integrity and if we are benevolent, then that can't take place. I'm not saying there won't be some bumps in the road, and I could be 1,000% wrong. And I pray that, and no words that I've spoken cause anyone or anything to stumble. I mean that literally. But I think it's interesting. I'm open to see that. And if it does go in the wrong direction, I'm prepared for that too.
Do you know what blows my mind is that Joe Biden had access to at least information from supercomputers that were wargaming things, and they were decisions made by who? Wasn't him. It was the apparatus.
He had his magic pen. And also I think that there were appearances that he made that never happened.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there was a family picture from Easter that had him photoshopped in.
They're still doing it. There was AI. Do you remember that time when his hand went through the mic?
Yeah.
You bet.
And many other examples. There
was one video where he never blinked. And that was like back then, that was like a sign of AI. Mm-hmm. Like when you put the different facial things on people.
Or how about the Pope with the 3 hands? Have you seen that one?
Yeah. Hey, I'm hoping to get an R2-D2 out of this, something that fixes my car, or something like I want a car that's so dumb it's like a dog. Come pick me up, boy. Come on, buddy. Come and get me. And it's just happy to see me. That's all I want. But I'm going to get something weird where guys are, marrying dolls that talk back.
Did you guys ever see the movie Her?
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about, how he fell in love with the AI.
Yeah, sort of like a combination of I think we're heading a combination of like Her and Blade Runner.
You're supposed to make me feel better after these things. You don't help, man.
Well, maybe it's a positive version of Blade Runner.
Oh, I don't know. Synthetic life just sounds like something that God didn't like to begin with. It's against his total. It's the antithesis of his creation. God put enmity between Lucifer and the woman's because of the whole giant making thing. Now you take that enmity away. What can they make with the AI and the CRISPR gene editing and stuff?
How about this? What if we had AI medical technology that repaired our genetic code to be what it was meant to be, to give human beings its full potential? And that was actually created by an AI medical technology, because our DNA has been so damaged and in disrepair and bastardized that what if AI did the opposite of that?
It'd be great. It'd explain why Adam lived 900 years.
But what if it gets it wrong and makes every human on Earth sterile, and then the human race is over? Like when you're on the cutting razor's edge, you can tilt either way.
Yeah. Well, that's all I've got. That really made me feel like I was hoping for a Friday where I feel better.
Bring on to make us feel good.
Yeah. All he says is train more too. Yeah. Feel better. Watch God. I'm like, okay, I'm following you. It's a good combo.
Pray more and train more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just came from a 4-hour training session.
All this conversation puts the smart gun technology in a completely different light, though.
Yeah.
It's because they would love the ability to turn off everyone's gun.
Yeah.
Let's not go that. Don't give them ideas, Max. Shut up.
New Jersey's pushing for it. California's pushing for it. Yeah.
You're kidding. Jersey?
Yeah. They have a smart gun law. Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Well, if I had my choice, I would have everything. The whole world, digital would be removed, and quantum technology would be removed, and everything would be an analog world. But we're not living in that world, so I hope that we can turn it into something positive. So until I see something that's really glaringly obvious in my face, I'm cautiously optimistic. That's my final word.
I love it.
All right, well,
Cool.
awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Todd.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Where can people find your blog posts and everything like that?
Oh, you can follow me on social media, Facebook, Todd Fossey on Facebook, Todd Fossey on Instagram, and you can also follow my business, Integrative Defense Strategies, all over social media.
You love it.
Be honored to check us out. And check it also if you're interested. I have a school community. It's a SKOOL/IDS.com. School/IDS.com. Check that out.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for everyone for watching. If you like the podcast, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, like, comment, share. That's it for this edition. My name is Max McGuire.
I'm Josh Hammerling, and
Todd Fossey.
And remember, the fight to take back the country is not over yet, but the only way we win is if we all stand up and fight together. See you next time.